The screen glows orange, fire trails licking the frame. A burning silhouette of Izuku Midoriya flashes across the screen. Eyes lit, fists ablaze. Born not in weakness, but in fire itself. This is a timeline where Deku wasn't quirkless. He was forged with a mutated flame that could melt steel and light the skies. What's up, ChronoCrew Legends? It's your boy Chronos, and today we're igniting part 1 of a brand new timeline. What if Deku had a mutated flame quirk? In this universe, Izuku Midoriya doesn't wait for a miracle, he becomes one. If you're ready for heat, heart, and heroism like never before, lock in right now. Like the video, let's blaze past 100 likes to unlock the next part. Hit that subscribe button and join the ChronoCrew Legends. Smash the bell so you're first on the timeline drop. This one's different. This one's personal. And trust me, you're not ready for what Deku becomes. Let's light it up. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Mutated City Park as 5-year-old Izuku Midoriya watched a group of older children playing heroes versus villains. His emerald eyes sparkled with unrestrained enthusiasm, tiny hands clutching his all-might action figure. Unlike many children his age who simply mimicked their favorite heroes, Izuku observed with analytical precision, mentally cataloging each movement and strategy. When I get my quirk, I'm going to be just like All Might, he whispered to himself, a ritual he'd repeated countless times while waiting for his own powers to manifest. Most children in his kindergarten class had already developed their quirks. His best friend Katsuki Bakugo had recently awakened an impressive explosion quirk that matched his fiery personality perfectly. Though Izuku hadn't shown signs of either his mother's attraction of small objects or his father's fire-breathing abilities, he remained optimistic. Izuku, it's getting late, sweetheart. His mother, Izuku Midoriya, called from a nearby bench where she'd been chatting with another parent. Coming, Mom, Izuku replied, tucking his action figure into his pocket. As he turned to join his mother, a sharp cry caught his attention. At the edge of the playground, a small girl with chestnut hair had climbed too high on the jungle gym and now clung fearfully to the metal bars, frozen in place. The other children had scattered, calling for adults. Without hesitation, Izuku changed direction and ran toward the jungle gym. Hold on, he called up to the girl, whose eyes were brimming with tears. I can't get down, she cried, her small hands trembling as they gripped the metal bars. Izuku climbed quickly, his determination overriding any concern for his own safety. It's okay, I'll help you. He had nearly reached her when the girl's fingers slipped. Time seemed to slow as Izuku lunged forward, stretching out his hand. In that moment, something inside him ignited. A warmth that surged from his core and raced through his veins like liquid sunshine. And oh, he shouted. And the world erupted in brilliant orange light. Flames burst from his outstretched hand, not in a wild, uncontrolled blaze, but in a cushioning spiral that wrapped around the falling girl, gently slowing her descent. Simultaneously, fire erupted from Izuku's back and feet, propelling him forward with unexpected momentum. He caught her midair, one arm securing her safely against his chest as they descended in a controlled drift toward the ground. The flames didn't burn either of them. Instead, they radiated a comforting warmth that seemed to respond to Izuku's protective instinct. As their feet touched the ground, the fire receded, leaving only wisps of smoke curling from Izuku's shoulders and fingertips. For a moment, the entire playground fell silent. Then, Izuku! His mother's voice broke through the stillness as she ran toward them, her face a mixture of shock and concern. The little girl stared up at him with wide eyes. You saved me, she whispered before a woman, presumably her mother, rushed over and swept her into a tight embrace. Izuku stood motionless, staring at his hands in wonder. They looked normal now, but he could still feel that warmth coursing beneath his skin, ready to answer his call again. Izuku, honey, are you okay? Inko knelt before him, checking him for injuries. What just happened? Was that? Did you? Mom, Izuku said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through his small body. I think I got my quirk. That evening, the Midoriya household buzzed with excitement. Hisashi Midoriya, who had been away on business, joined the celebration via video call as soon as he heard the news. That's my boy. Hisashi's voice boomed from the tablet screen, his face alight with pride. A fire quirk, but different from mine. Sounds like you've hit the quirk lottery, son. Izuku sat at the kitchen table, still processing the day's events while his mother prepared katsudon, his favorite dish, as a special celebration. The doctor said we should come in for official quirk registration tomorrow, Inko explained, setting down plates of steaming food. He seemed quite interested when I described what happened. Did he say anything about why Izuku's quirk manifested this way? Hisashi asked. It doesn't sound like a simple combination of our quirks. Inko glanced at Izuku, who was listening intently. He mentioned something about quirk mutations, cases where the child's quirk evolves beyond a simple mixing of the parent's abilities. He said he'd explain more tomorrow. Izuku picked up his chopsticks but paused before eating. Mom, Dad? I didn't burn her. The fire, it didn't hurt either of us. His parents exchanged meaningful looks. That's remarkable, Izuku, his father said seriously. Most fire quirk users have to train for years to develop that kind of control. The way you described it, Inko added softly, it's almost as if your quirk responded to your desire to save that little girl. Izuku nodded slowly. It felt, right? Like the fire was part of me, listening to what I needed. He looked down at his hands again, trying to recapture that feeling. To his surprise, tiny flames flickered to life around his fingertips, dancing harmlessly across his skin. The warm glow illuminated his face, reflecting in his wide eyes. Incredible, Hisashi whispered. Inko reached across the table, hesitating just above Izuku's flaming hand. He looked up at her and nodded encouragingly. When she gently touched his hand, the flames parted around her fingers, warm but not burning. My hero, she said, tears welling in her eyes as she smiled at her son. Later that night, as Izuku lay in bed surrounded by his hero merchandise, he stared at the All Might poster on his ceiling. He raised his hand, summoning a small flame that cast shifting shadows across the room. I can be a hero now, he thought, watching the fire respond to his subtle movements. A real hero, just like All Might. He closed his fist, extinguishing the flame, and made a promise to himself. He would master this power, train harder than anyone, and become the kind of hero who could save everyone with a smile. The quirk specialist's office was filled with diagrams of human anatomy highlighting various quirk manifestations. Dr. Tsubasa adjusted his glasses as he reviewed the results of Izuku's examination. Fascinating, he murmured, more to himself than to the anxious mother and curious child sitting across from his desk. Simply fascinating. Doctor, Inko prompted, her hand resting protectively on Izuku's shoulder. Dr. Tsubasa looked up, seeming to remember they were waiting for his assessment. Ah yes, well, Mrs. Midoriya, Izuku has indeed developed what we call a mutated quirk, a rare evolutionary leap beyond the simple combination of parental abilities. He turned his computer screen so they could see a detailed scan of Izuku's body, with certain areas highlighted in bright colors. You see, while most children inherit aspects of their parents' quirks, sometimes the genetic material combines in unexpected ways, creating entirely new abilities. In Izuku's case, the telekinetic properties from your quirk, Mrs. Midoriya, have merged with Mr. Midoriya's fire-breathing at a fundamental level. The doctor pointed to the colorful areas on the scan. These specialized cells throughout Izuku's body can generate and manipulate thermal energy. Unlike your husband's quirk, which requires him to expel fire from his lungs, Izuku can produce flames from virtually any part of his body. Izuku leaned forward, fascinated. So I can make fire anywhere? Dr. Tsubasa nodded. Essentially, yes. But what's truly remarkable is the telekinetic component. You're not just creating fire, Izuku, you're controlling it on a molecular level. That's why you didn't burn yourself or that little girl yesterday. Your body instinctively manipulates the thermal energy to prevent harm to yourself and, apparently, to others you wish to protect. That's amazing, Inko breathed. Indeed, I'm officially registering his quirk as Blazing Soul, a fitting name for an ability that seems so intimately connected to his intentions and emotions. The doctor turned back to Izuku. With proper training, you could develop incredible control over fire, perhaps even manipulating its intensity, direction, and form with extraordinary precision. Izuku's eyes widened. Like a real hero, Dr. Tsubasa smiled. With this quirk, you certainly have the potential. But remember, young man, great power requires great responsibility and training. Fire quirks can be particularly dangerous if mishandled. I'll train really hard, Izuku promised solemnly. I want to help people, not hurt them. As they left the doctor's office, Izuku clutched the official quirk registration card in his small hands, reading the description over and over. Blazing Soul. User can generate and telekinetically control fire from any part of their body with exceptional precision. Temperature and range limitations currently unknown. Potential applications include propulsion, defensive barriers, and offensive capabilities. Mom, he said as they walked home, I need to start training right away. Inko looked down at her son, recognizing the determination in his eyes. the same look she'd seen countless times when he watched hero footage or studied their techniques. "We'll figure it out together, sweetheart," she promised. "But first, there's someone I think you'd like to tell about your quirk." Izuku's face lit up. Kaken, the Bakugo household was as lively as ever when Inko and Izuku arrived. Mitsuki Bakugo greeted them at the door with her characteristic energy. Inko, and little Izuku too. What a nice surprise. She ushered them inside, calling over her shoulder, "Katsuki, Izuku's here to see you." Moments later, a spiky-haired boy barreled into the living room, a confident grin on his face. "Hey, Izuku, want to see what I can do now? I've been practicing my explosions in it." "Kaken," Izuku interrupted, unable to contain his excitement. "I got my quirk yesterday." Katsuki stopped mid-sentence, his red eyes widening. "For real? What is it? Show me." The adults exchanged amused glances as the boys rushed to the Bakugo's backyard, which had been specially reinforced to withstand Katsuki's explosive tendencies. In the open space, Izuku stood facing his friend, suddenly feeling a flutter of nervousness. What if he couldn't summon the flames again? What if he lost control? No, he thought firmly. "I can do this." He closed his eyes, focusing on the warmth he'd felt the day before, that inner light waiting to be called forth. When he opened his eyes again, he held out his palm and willed the fire to come. A small flame bloomed in his hand, steadily growing until it swirled around his entire arm in a spiral of orange and gold. With his other hand, he shaped the fire, stretching it into a thin stream that danced through the air before forming it into a miniature, flickering figure of all might. Katsuki's jaw dropped. That's so cool," he exclaimed, genuine admiration in his voice. "You can make shapes and everything." Izuku grinned, allowing the fiery all might to dissolve into sparks that harmlessly faded away. The doctor called it blazing soul. "I can make fire anywhere on my body and control it however I want." Katsuki's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "So it's like my explosions, but with actual fire, and you don't have to blow stuff up to use it?" "I guess so," Izuku nodded. "I can even fly with it." "Well, sort of, I did yesterday anyway." "No way. Show me." Izuku hesitated. "I'm not sure I know how to do it on purpose yet." "Come on, just try. I bet you can do it." Encouraged by his friend's confidence, Izuku closed his eyes again, remembering the sensation of propulsion he'd experienced. He concentrated on his feet and hands, imagining flames pushing against the ground. First, nothing happened. Then, small jets of flame burst from his palms and soles, lifting him shakily about a foot off the ground. He wobbled precariously for a few seconds before the flames sputtered out, and he dropped back to the grass. "That was awesome," Katsuki shouted, punching the air. "You really can fly." Izuku brushed grass from his pants, grinning despite his unsteady landing. "I need a lot more practice, but yeah, you know what this means, right?" Katsuki's eyes gleamed with competitive fire. "We're both gonna be amazing heroes, but I'm still gonna be number one." Instead of feeling discouraged by his friend's declaration, Izuku felt a spark of friendly rivalry ignite within him. "We'll see about that, Kaken. I'm going to train super hard too." The boys spent the afternoon testing the limits of their quirks, with the adults supervising from a safe distance. When Inko finally called Izuku home for dinner, the boys bumped fists, Katsuki's palms sparking with tiny explosions while Izuku's glowed with gentle flames. "Rivals?" Katsuki asked, a challenging smirk on his face. Izuku matched his expression with determined confidence. "Rivals and friends." That night, as Izuku prepared for bed, he opened his hero analysis notebook and began a new section, My Quirk, Blazing Soul. On the first page, he sketched himself surrounded by flames, adding notes about his experiences so far and ideas for training. "Day 1 with my quirk," he wrote. "I can create fire and control it pretty well for simple shapes. Flying is hard. Need to practice balance and consistent output. Temperature control seems automatic, didn't burn anything I didn't want to. Need to test limits of heat, duration, and range." He tapped his pencil against the page, thinking. Below his notes, he added, "Training goals. 1. Flight control. 2. Precision shaping. 3. Combat applications. 4. Rescue techniques. 5. Endurance. How long can I maintain flames?" Satisfied with his plan, Izuku closed the notebook and placed it on his nightstand. As he drifted off to sleep, his dreams were filled with images of himself soaring through the sky on wings of fire, saving people with the same confident smile as his idol, All Might. Summer vacation arrived, bringing with it long days perfect for quirk training. At 6 years old, Izuku approached his development with a dedication that surprised even his mother. Each morning began with physical exercises, running, push-ups, and stretches, followed by careful quirk practice in a secluded corner of the local park that the city had designated for quirk training. "Remember what we discussed?" Inko reminded him as they set up their training area with heat-resistant mats and safety equipment. "Start small, focus on control, and if you feel tired, stop immediately." Izuku nodded seriously, already in his training mindset. After several weeks of practice, he'd established a routine that systematically addressed each aspect of his quirk. Today, he started with what he called flame meditation, sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, producing small flames on different parts of his body and maintaining them at a constant size. This exercise had dramatically improved his concentration and baseline control. "Good," Inko observed as perfect spheres of fire hovered above each of Izuku's palms. "Now try changing their temperature without changing their size." This was more challenging. Izuku's brow furrowed as he focused on the molecular manipulation Dr. Tsubasa had explained. The flame in his right hand shifted from orange to a deeper red, its heat diminishing until it was barely warmer than his skin. The left flame, meanwhile, intensified to a bright yellow-white, radiating enough heat that Inko had to step back. "Excellent," she praised. "You're getting much better at temperature control." Izuku opened his eyes, allowing the flames to dissipate. "It's still hard to do different temperatures at the same time," he admitted. "And the really hot flames drain my energy faster." Inko checked her notes. "That makes sense. Higher thermal energy requires more quirk output." She smiled at her son's analytical approach, which reminded her so much of his father. "Ready for flight practice?" Izuku's face lit up. This was his favorite part. They moved to an open area where Inko had set up a series of hoops suspended from tree branches at various heights, a makeshift obstacle course for his flying practice. Over the past weeks, Izuku had graduated from hovering a few feet off the ground to actual controlled flight. He'd discovered that the key was balanced flame output and body positioning, principles he'd studied by watching footage of jet-propelled heroes. Taking a deep breath, Izuku activated his quirk. Flames erupted from his feet and hands, lifting him steadily into the air. Unlike his early attempts, which had been jerky and unstable, he now rose with increasing smoothness, adjusting the intensity of each flame jet to maintain balance. "That's it, Izuku," Inko called encouragingly. "Now try the course." Hovering about 10 feet above the ground, Izuku leaned forward, increasing the flame output from his hands to propel himself toward the first hoop. As he approached it, he tilted his body, rotating through the circle with growing confidence. The second hoop was higher, requiring him to angle his feet differently to gain altitude. The third was lower and at an angle, testing his maneuverability. By the time he reached the fourth and final hoop, Izuku was fully immersed in the rhythm of flight, his body responding intuitively to his mental commands. After completing the course, he allowed himself a moment of celebration, spiraling upward in a corkscrew pattern before descending in a controlled landing before his mother. "That was your best run yet," Inko exclaimed, checking her stopwatch. 15 seconds faster than yesterday." Izuku beamed, though his breathing was heavy from exertion. "I think I'm getting the hang of changing directions quickly, but I still need to work on efficient energy use. I can feel the drain after just a few minutes." Inko made another note in her training journal. "Your endurance will build over time. Remember, you're still growing, and your quirk will develop along with your body." After a water break, they moved on to precision exercises. Inko set up a row of candles at varying distances. "Light them without moving from your position," she instructed. "One at a time, smallest flame possible." Izuku took a stance, extending his hand toward the first candle. A thin stream of fire, no thicker than a pencil, shot from his fingertip and ignited the wick. He moved methodically through the row, each flame precisely controlled. When he reached the final candle, nearly 30 feet away, he hesitated. "That's beyond my current range," he admitted. "Try anyway," Inko encouraged. "Push your limits a little each day, remember?" Nodding, Izuku focused intently, extending his arm fully. This time, instead of a direct stream, he created a small fireball in his palm and used his telekinetic control to launch it forward. The tiny flame sailed through the air and landed perfectly on the candle wick. "I did it!" he exclaimed, momentarily losing concentration and causing all the candles to flare dramatically before he hastily extinguished them. Inko applauded. Very creative solution. You combined projection with telekinetic guidance. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck, pleased but embarrassed by his momentary loss of control. I thought about how you move small objects with your quirk, Mom. I figured I could do the same with fire. That's exactly the kind of innovative thinking heroes need, she said proudly. Now, let's finish with some combat applications before we call it a day. This final segment was relatively new to their training regimen. After much discussion, Inko had reluctantly agreed that Izuku needed to develop offensive techniques if he wanted to become a well-rounded hero. They moved to an area equipped with heat-resistant dummies. Izuku took a fighting stance, remembering the basics of the martial arts classes he'd recently begun. "Show me what you've been working on," Inko said, stepping back to a safe distance. Izuku nodded, his expression shifting to one of intense focus. He extended his right fist, concentrating flame around it until his entire arm was sheathed in fire. "Fire fist!" he called out, driving the flaming punch into the first dummy. The impact left a scorched impression and pushed the heavy dummy back several inches. Moving to the next target, Izuku created 2 flame whips that extended from his wrists, using them to ensnare the dummy before pulling sharply to topple it. For the final dummy, he attempted a more advanced technique he'd been theorizing in his notebook. Concentrating intensely, he gathered heat in the air around his body, compressing it until the atmosphere seemed to waver. "Nova! Burst!" he shouted, releasing the compressed energy in a controlled explosion that engulfed the dummy in a brilliant flash of fire before quickly extinguishing itself. The display was impressive, but the effort left Izuku swaying on his feet. Inko rushed forward, supporting him before he could fall. "I think that's enough for today," she said firmly, helping him to the bench where their water bottles waited. "That last technique took a lot out of you." Izuku gulped down water, his face flushed with exertion. "I've been practicing it in my imagination," he explained between breaths. "Compressing the heat before releasing it makes it more powerful, without using more energy." Inko handed him an energy bar. "The theory might be sound, but your body needs to catch up to your ideas. You're pushing yourself too hard." "I have to," Izuku insisted, his breathing gradually steadying. "If I want to be a great hero, I need to master every aspect of my quirk." Inko sat beside him, gently brushing his sweat-dampened hair from his forehead. "You will, Izuku. But remember what Dr. Tsubasa said, quirk development is a marathon, not a sprint, especially with a power as versatile as yours." As they packed up their training equipment, Izuku's mind was already racing with ideas for tomorrow's session. Despite his exhaustion, the thrill of progress fueled his determination. "Mom," he said suddenly, "do you think I could invite Kakin to train with me sometime? Having a sparring partner might help me develop better combat techniques." Inko considered this. "I'll talk to Mitsuki about it. If we establish clear safety rules, it might be beneficial for both of you." Izuku's eyes lit up. "Thanks, Mom. And maybe we could look into heat-resistant materials for a training costume? Something that won't burn when I use my quirk at full power." "One step at a time," Inko laughed, ruffling his hair. "But yes, we'll look into it." As they walked home, Izuku caught sight of his reflection in a shop window, a small boy with determined eyes and unruly green hair. For a moment, he superimposed his future self over the reflection. Taller, stronger, flames dancing around a hero costume, saving people with confidence and skill. "I'll get there," he promised himself, "no matter how hard I have to work." Summer turned to fall and fall to winter. Years passed in a rhythm of school, training, and gradual quirk development. By the time Izuku turned 12, his control over Blazing Soul had improved dramatically, though he still discovered new applications and techniques regularly. The training sessions with Katsuki had indeed materialized, evolving into weekly sparring matches that pushed both boys to refine their abilities. Under the supervision of both mothers, they transformed a section of the local quirk gym into their personal battleground, each victory and defeat serving as valuable learning experiences. "You're holding back again, Izuku," Katsuki shouted as he dodged a flame whip that curved away from him at the last second. "Stop worrying about burning me. I can take it." They circled each other on the heat-resistant training mat, both boys dressed in special workout clothes designed to withstand their quirks. Katsuki's hands crackled with explosive energy, while Izuku's arms were wreathed in controlled flames. "I'm not holding back," Izuku replied, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. I'm being strategic. To prove his point, he suddenly dropped to one knee, placing his palm against the mat. A ring of fire erupted outward, forcing Katsuki to leap into the air to avoid it, exactly as Izuku had anticipated. With his opponent momentarily airborne and unable to change direction, Izuku launched a precision fireball that caught Katsuki squarely in the chest, knocking him backward. The impact-absorbing mat cushioned Katsuki's landing, though he still hit with enough force to momentarily knock the wind from his lungs. The flames dissipated instantly upon contact, leaving only a sooty mark on his training shirt. Point, Izuku, Mitsuki called from the sidelines, where she was keeping score. That's 3-2. Katsuki jumped to his feet, a competitive grin spreading across his face despite the loss. Lucky shot, Izuku, but I'm just warming up. Without warning, he charged forward, palms exploding in rapid succession to create a disorienting pattern of blasts. Izuku raised a fire barrier, but Katsuki had anticipated this defense. He detonated a particularly powerful explosion to the side, using the force to propel himself around the barrier. Gotcha, he crowed, coming up behind Izuku with his palm primed for a finishing blow. But Izuku had been practicing his reflexes. He dropped the forward barrier and instantly created a flame jet from his back, propelling himself forward just as Katsuki's explosion detonated, where he had been standing a split second earlier. Rolling to his feet, Izuku spun to face his friend, hands ready. Nice try, Kaken, but my mobility has improved too. Boys, Inko interrupted, checking her watch. That's time for today. You both have homework to finish before dinner. Though they protested, the session concluded with their traditional fist bump, explosive meeting flame in a small spectacle that never failed to symbolize their unique friendship. As they cooled down with stretches, Katsuki nudged Izuku's shoulder. That new move you used at the beginning, the fire ring thing. When did you come up with that? Last night, actually, Izuku admitted. I was reading about battlefield control techniques used by pro heroes, and it occurred to me that I could create area denial effects to limit opponent mobility. Katsuki snorted. Only you would turn bedtime reading into Quirk strategies. Despite his teasing tone, there was genuine respect in his voice. It was a good move, though. Caught me off guard. Your aerial maneuverability is getting better, Izuku countered, always quick to acknowledge his friend's progress. Those consecutive explosions for redirection were really smooth. They continued this analytical exchange as they gathered their belongings, each offering the other insights and suggestions with the straightforward honesty that characterized their relationship. Hey, Katsuki said suddenly as they were about to part ways outside the gym. Have you thought more about which high school you're aiming for? Izuku's expression grew serious. UA, of course. It's always been UA. Good, Katsuki grinned. Me too. The hero course, nothing less. We still have 2 years before entrance exams, Izuku pointed out. 2 years to get even stronger, Katsuki corrected him. I'm not letting you get ahead of me, Izuku. When we both get into UA, I'm still going to be the one to beat. Instead of intimidating him, Katsuki's declaration invigorated Izuku. Their rivalry had always pushed him to exceed his limits, to find new applications for his quirk that he might not have discovered otherwise. I wouldn't have it any other way, Kaken, he replied with a confident smile. The following weekend found Izuku at Dagoba Municipal Beach, once a beautiful shoreline, now a dumping ground for unwanted appliances and trash. He'd discovered this location months ago and recognized its potential as a private training ground where he could practice more destructive techniques without endangering others. Today, he was working on what he called his Flame Flight 2.0, an enhanced version of his aerial mobility that integrated combat maneuvers. Using a series of discarded refrigerators as targets, he practiced aerial bombardment while maintaining precise flight control. Hovering 20 feet above the sand, Izuku executed a complex corkscrew maneuver, releasing carefully aimed firebolts at each target as he spiraled. 7 out of 8 hit their marks, causing the metal to glow red but not melt. Exactly the level of control he was aiming for. Still not perfect, he thought, landing lightly on an elevated washing machine to survey his work. The trajectory calculation during rotation needs refinement. He was preparing for another attempt when movement caught his eye. At the edge of the beach, a gaunt man with wild blonde hair stood watching him. The stranger wore baggy clothes that seemed too large for his skeletal frame, but something about his posture conveyed strength despite his appearance. Izuku immediately extinguished his flames, unsure if he was trespassing or breaking some quirk use regulation. "I'm sorry," he called out. "Is training here not allowed?" The man approached, navigating the trash piles with surprising agility. As he drew closer, Izuku was struck by his deep-set blue eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. "Young man," the stranger said, his voice unexpectedly deep and resonant for his thin frame. "This is public property. While quirk use is technically restricted, this area is overlooked by authorities due to its condition." He gestured at the targeted refrigerators, their surfaces now cooling from Izuku's practice. "That was impressive control for someone your age. You're training to be a hero, I take it?" "Yes, sir," Izuku responded instantly, standing straighter. "I'm working to master my quirk for the UA entrance exam in 2 years." The man's eyebrows rose slightly. "UA? Ambitious, though based on what I just witnessed, not unreasonable." He looked around at the trash-strewn beach. "Interesting choice of training ground." Izuku jumped down from his perch, landing in the sand. "It has everything I need: space, privacy, and targets I can practice on without causing property damage." He hesitated, then added, "Plus, I keep hoping that if I clear enough of it during my training, someday the beach might be usable again." This statement seemed to surprise the stranger, whose gaunt face broke into a genuine smile. "Combining hero training with community service. That's a rare perspective for someone your age." He extended a bony hand. "Tashinori Yagi. I sometimes walk this route for health reasons." "Izuku Midoriya," Izuku replied, shaking the offered hand. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Yagi." "Your quirk," Tashinori said, gesturing vaguely toward Izuku. "Fire-based, obviously, but with remarkable precision. Mind telling me about it?" Normally cautious about sharing quirk details with strangers, Izuku nevertheless felt an inexplicable sense of trust toward this man. "It's called Blazing Soul. I can generate and control fire from any part of my body. The control comes from a telekinetic component that lets me shape and direct the flames." "Fascinating," Tashinori murmured. "A versatile quirk with both offensive and rescue applications. Your aerial maneuvers suggest you've focused significantly on mobility." Izuku nodded enthusiastically, always eager to discuss hero techniques. "Mobility is essential for both combat and rescue operations. Being able to quickly reach people in danger or reposition during a fight can make all the difference." "Very true," Tashinori agreed, "though I notice your left side movements are slightly less fluid than your right. A minor adjustment to your flame output during turns could improve your balance." Izuku blinked in surprise. This stranger had spotted a flaw in his technique that he'd been struggling with for weeks, just from watching a single training sequence. "Are you a pro hero?" he asked tentatively. Tashinori coughed, a strangely nervous sound. No, not exactly. Let's just say I have some experience in the field and leave it at that." He checked his watch. "I should continue my walk, but it was a pleasure meeting you, young Midoriya." As he turned to leave, he added, "If you're serious about clearing this beach, focus on the larger items first. Create paths that make removing the smaller debris easier. Work smarter, not just harder." "Wait," Izuku called. "Will you be walking this way again?" Tashinori paused, seeming to consider the question carefully. "Perhaps. Same time next weekend." Izuku's face lit up. "I'll be here training." After Tashinori departed, Izuku returned to his practice with renewed vigor, making conscious adjustments to his left side flame output as suggested. To his delight, the improvement was immediate. His aerial turns became noticeably more balanced. Who was that man? He wondered as he continued his exercises. He clearly knows a lot about hero work and quirk applications. By the time Izuku packed up his training gear, he had not only refined his aerial maneuvers but also cleared a substantial section of beach, moving larger appliances into organized piles using controlled bursts of flame to lift and reposition them. As promised, Tashinori returned the following weekend, and a pattern was established. Their encounters were brief, usually just 15 to 20 minutes of conversation and observation, but invariably insightful. The mysterious man never demonstrated a quirk of his own, yet his advice on hero techniques and quirk applications was unfailingly precise and valuable. Sometimes they discussed theoretical scenarios a hero might face, with Toshinori challenging Izuku to consider multiple solutions beyond the obvious application of his quirk. Other times, they focused on the physical aspects of heroism, endurance, strength, and tactical movement. Raw power is important, Toshinori explained during one session, but a true hero's greatest asset is their judgment, knowing when and how to use their abilities, and sometimes, when not to use them at all. Izuku absorbed these lessons eagerly, incorporating them into his training regimen and hero analysis journals. He occasionally wondered about Toshinori's background, but respected the man's privacy enough not to press for details he seemed reluctant to share. What mattered was that with each passing month, Dagobah Beach grew cleaner, Izuku's control over Blazing Soul grew stronger, and his path toward becoming a hero became increasingly clear. At 14, Izuku's training intensified as the UA entrance exam loomed a year away. His once skinny frame had developed wiry muscle from years of physical conditioning, and his quirk had evolved in both power and sophistication. Dagobah Beach, once a junkyard, now showed significant improvement. Nearly half of its shoreline had been cleared through Izuku's diligent efforts, revealing glimpses of the beautiful coast it had once been. The transformation mirrored his own development, gradual, methodical, and driven by unwavering purpose. On a crisp autumn morning, Izuku arrived at the beach for a session focused on a new technique he'd been developing. The area was deserted except for Toshinori, who waited at their usual meeting spot with a thermos of tea. "Good morning, young Midoriya," he greeted, pouring a cup for each of them. "You seem particularly determined today." Izuku accepted the tea gratefully. Over the past 2 years, these meetings had evolved into something approaching mentorship, though Toshinori still maintained a certain mystery about his background. "I've been working on something new," Izuku explained after taking a sip. "A technique for situations where maximum power is needed in a controlled burst." Toshinori's interest was evident. "Show me." Setting aside his cup, Izuku moved to an open area of sand. He took a deep breath, centering himself as he'd learned through countless hours of practice. Flames ignited around his body, not in the wild eruption of his childhood, but in perfectly controlled sheets that hugged his form like a second skin. "The key is compression," he explained, his voice steady despite the increasing heat. "Instead of simply producing more fire, I'm condensing thermal energy into a denser state." The flames around him began to change, shifting from their usual orange gold to a deeper, more intense blue-white. The air around him shimmered with heat, yet the sand beneath his feet remained unmelted, a testament to his precise control. "Nova Burst," Izuku announced, bringing his hands together before him. The compressed flames gathered between his palms, forming a sphere of intensely bright energy about the size of a baseball. With a fluid motion, he thrust his hands forward, releasing the sphere toward a lone refrigerator positioned at the water's edge. The projectile moved with startling speed, striking its target with pinpoint accuracy. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the refrigerator didn't simply melt or catch fire. It effectively disintegrated in a controlled explosion of heat, leaving only a glowing puddle of metal that rapidly cooled in the morning air. Izuku lowered his hands, extinguishing the remaining flames around his body. Though the display had been impressive, he showed none of the exhaustion that would have followed such an effort in his younger years. His endurance had grown alongside his control. "Well?" he asked, turning to Toshinori. The gaunt man's expression was unreadable for a moment before breaking into an approving smile. "Extraordinary control. You've come a long way from the boy doing spiral flights between junk piles." He stepped closer, analytical as always. "The compression technique is particularly noteworthy, minimizing quirk energy expenditure while maximizing impact." Izuku beamed at the praise. "I got the idea from studying how stars work, actually. The gravitational compression of gases creates the conditions for nuclear fusion. I thought, what if I could create a similar compression effect with my flames?" "Creative application of scientific principles," Toshinori nodded. "The mark of a thoughtful hero." He paused, seeming to consider something. "Have you developed similar techniques for non-destructive scenarios? Rescue operations, for instance?" "Actually, yes," Izuku replied eagerly. "I've been working on what I call Flame Sanctuary, a technique for creating protective heat barriers that can shield civilians from debris or hazardous environments." To demonstrate, he extended both hands outward, generating a dome of translucent flame that enclosed a 10-foot radius around them. Unlike the intense heat of his Nova Burst, This fire radiated a gentle warmth. The barrier can be adjusted for temperature and permeability, Izuku explained. In a rescue situation, I could create a breathable, comfortable environment for civilians while keeping out smoke, water, or falling debris. Toshinori reached out tentatively, his hand passing through the barrier with no discomfort. Remarkable. You've truly embraced the versatility of your quirk. The flame dome dissipated as Izuku lowered his arms. I want to be prepared for any situation. A hero has to be ready to both fight villains and save lives, sometimes simultaneously. Toshinori's expression grew thoughtful. Young Midoriya, we've known each other for over 2 years now and have watched your growth with great interest. He hesitated, then continued. I believe you're ready for the next stage of your development, practical experience. Izuku's eyes widened. What do you mean? There's only so much you can learn from solo training and theoretical scenarios, Toshinori explained. Real heroism happens in unpredictable circumstances, with variables no training regimen can fully simulate. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket and handed it to Izuku. This is information about a specialized pre-UA program for exceptional quirk users. It provides supervised exposure to simulated hero operations, essentially a taste of what professional hero work entails. Izuku unfolded the paper with trembling hands. The program was indeed impressive. Weekend sessions at a facility designed to replicate various emergency scenarios, supervised by retired pro heroes and safety specialists. This is amazing, he breathed. But it says admission is by recommendation only. Toshinori's thin lips curved into a smile. Consider yourself recommended, young man. Izuku looked up in shock. You can do that? But who? Let's just say I still have some connections in the hero community, Toshinori interrupted gently. Your dedication and progress have earned this opportunity. The program begins next month and runs until the UA entrance exams. I believe it will provide valuable experience to complement your technical training. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Izuku bowed deeply. Thank you, Mr. Yagi. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Toshinori replied, his blue eyes reflecting a pride that seemed almost paternal. Now, shall we continue today's training? I noticed your flame projection still has a slight delay during directional changes. The pre-UA program exceeded even Izuku's expectations. Held at a specialized facility on the outskirts of Muzurifu, it featured elaborate training grounds designed to simulate everything from natural disasters to villain attacks. During his first session, Izuku found himself assigned to a team with 3 other students, each with powerful quirks and similar aspirations to attend UA. Their tasks seemed straightforward: locate and rescue civilians, training dummies, from a partially collapsed building while contending with ongoing aftershocks, controlled vibrations of the structure. Team 2, you have 15 minutes to evacuate all civilians, announced their supervisor, a retired rescue hero who introduced herself as Breakpoint. Work together, communicate clearly, and remember, in a real situation, coordination saves more lives than individual heroics. As they approached the training building, Izuku assessed his teammates, a girl who could create solidified air platforms, a boy with enhanced strength, and another boy who could temporarily harden surfaces he touched. I can use my flames to search the building quickly, Izuku suggested as they huddled for strategy. The heat signatures will help locate the victims. The others agreed, quickly formulating a plan that leveraged each of their quirks. Izuku would locate the victims, the platform creator would secure safe extraction routes, the strength enhancer would handle heavy debris, and the hardening user would stabilize dangerous structural elements. When the exercise began, Izuku activated his quirk, flames propelling him through the building's windows and corridors. He modulated his fire to the lowest possible heat, creating just enough illumination to navigate the darkened structure while scanning for the distinctive heat patterns of the dummies. First floor, east corner, 2 civilians under debris. He called through the communication device they'd been issued. Second floor partially collapsed. At least 3 more civilians visible. His aerial mobility proved invaluable as he darted between floors, providing real-time information to his team. When a particularly strong aftershock caused a section of ceiling to collapse, Izuku instinctively created his flame sanctuary around a cluster of dummies, protecting them from falling debris until his teammates could secure the area. Working in seamless coordination, they evacuated all 11 dummies with 2 minutes to spare, a result that earned them enthusiastic praise from Breakpoint. Excellent work, Team 2, she commended. Especially you, Midoriya. Your reconnaissance and that protective fire dome were particularly effective. Though I'd suggest conserving some energy next time, real rescue operations can last hours, not minutes. Izuku absorbed the feedback eagerly. This was exactly the kind of practical instruction he'd been missing, insights from experienced pros about real-world application of heroic techniques. As the program progressed over subsequent weekends, Izuku encountered increasingly complex scenarios. Hostage situations where precise quirk control was essential, disaster zones with multiple overlapping crises, and even simulated villain encounters that tested combat capabilities within strict ethical guidelines. Each exercise brought new challenges and lessons, gradually reshaping Izuku's understanding of what professional heroism truly entailed. It wasn't just about power or technique, it was about judgment, adaptability, and above all, a fundamental commitment to saving lives in any circumstance. Perhaps most valuable were the relationships formed with fellow participants and instructors. Unlike his training with Katsuki, which focused primarily on combat and rivalry, these interactions emphasized teamwork and complementary quirk applications. "Your quirk is incredible, Midoriya," commented one instructor after watching him execute a complex aerial rescue. "But what impresses me more is how you're always thinking about minimizing collateral effects. That kind of consideration is what separates great heroes from merely powerful ones." With each session, Izuku incorporated new insights into his personal training regimen, refining techniques and developing situational responses that addressed real-world complexities. His hero analysis notebooks filled with practical observations rather than just theoretical applications, transforming from fan documentation to professional resource. By the time the program concluded, 3 months before the UA entrance exam, Izuku had gained more than just technical skill. He developed the situational awareness and decision-making abilities that characterized veteran heroes. "You've made remarkable progress, young Midoriya," Toshinori commented during one of their final beach training sessions. The shoreline was now almost completely cleared, with only a small section still awaiting attention. "Both in your quirk development and in your understanding of heroism itself." Izuku, performing cooling down stretches after an intense training sequence, smiled at the praise. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance, Mr. Yagi, or the pre-UA program you recommended." Toshinori waved off the gratitude. "I merely pointed you in the right direction. The work, the blood, sweat, and determination, that was all you." He gazed out at the nearly restored beach, his expression contemplative. "You know, when we first met, this place was an eyesore that most people simply accepted as permanent. No one believed it could be cleaned up by one person's efforts." He turned back to Izuku. "Yet here we are." Izuku understood the parallel. "Just like no one thinks a middle school student can be ready for true hero work." "Precisely," Toshinori nodded. "Remember this beach when you face the entrance exam, young Midoriya. Let it remind you that persistence and principled effort can transform what others consider impossible into reality." As the sun began to set over the now beautiful coastline, Izuku felt a profound sense of readiness. The UA entrance exam would be challenging, perhaps the most difficult test he'd yet faced, but he would meet it with everything he'd learned and developed over years of dedicated preparation. "This is just the beginning," he thought, watching the golden light play across the waves. "The real journey starts at UA." The day of the UA entrance exam arrived with clear skies and a crisp winter breeze. Izuku stood before his bedroom mirror, checking his appearance one final time. At 15, he had grown into a lean, athletic young man with the confident posture of someone comfortable in his own skin. His unruly green hair remained as untamable as ever, but his eyes held a steady determination that hadn't been there in his earliest training days. "Izuku, breakfast is ready," his mother called from the kitchen. "Coming," he replied, grabbing his meticulously packed bag. Downstairs, Inko had prepared a balanced meal designed to provide optimal energy for the day ahead. A blend of complex carbohydrates, protein, and nutrients that they'd researched together as part of his training regimen. "Are you nervous?" she asked as he sat down to eat. Izuku considered the question while buttering his toast. "Not nervous exactly," he answered thoughtfully. "More focused. Everything I've worked for comes down to today." Inko reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "You've prepared for this moment for years, Izuku. Whatever happens today, I couldn't be prouder of the young man you've become." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Happy ones, Izuku knew, though his mother's emotional nature hadn't changed despite his growing up. "Thanks, Mom," he said sincerely, "for everything. All the support, all the training help, all the times you believed in me even when what I was attempting seemed impossible." They finished breakfast in comfortable conversation, reviewing his preparation one last time. As Izuku was about to leave, his phone chimed with a message from Katsuki. "See you there, Izuku." Don't you dare fail before we get to compete at UA properly. The message made Izuku smile. Their rivalry had matured over the years into something that pushed them both to excel without the toxic elements it might have developed under different circumstances. Wouldn't dream of it, Kaken, he typed back. Good luck today. Not that you need it. At the front door, Inko adjusted his collar in a maternal gesture before pulling him into a tight hug. Remember, Izuku, a hero's greatest strength isn't in their quirk, but in their heart. And you have the strongest heart I know. Izuku returned the embrace, momentarily allowing himself to draw comfort from his mother's unwavering support. I'll make you proud, he promised. You already have, she whispered. UA High School loomed before him, its modern architecture embodying the prestigious institution's forward-thinking approach to hero education. As Izuku approached the main gate, he spotted familiar and unfamiliar faces alike. Hundreds of hopeful students gathered to pursue the same dream. Izuku! Katsuki's voice cut through the crowd. He stood near the entrance, his posture radiating his characteristic confidence. Izuku made his way over, exchanging their customary fist bump. Ready to crush this, Kaken? Born ready, Katsuki replied with a grin. Saw the format details this morning, written exam first, then practical. They're keeping the specifics of the practical test secret. Smart, Izuku nodded. Prevents people from preparing specific counters. Forces adaptability. They walked together through the gates, their conversation flowing easily despite the tension that hung in the air around them. Other examinees watched them curiously, their comfortable camaraderie contrasting with the nervous energy permeating the crowd. The written examination proved challenging but manageable. Years of analytical study had prepared Izuku well for questions that tested not just academic knowledge but ethical judgment and situational reasoning. He completed the test with confidence, feeling that his answers had accurately reflected both his capabilities and his values as an aspiring hero. When the practical exam was announced, however, the true test began. Welcome to my live show, the voice of President Mike boomed through the auditorium. Everybody say hey. Silence met his enthusiastic greeting, prompting the pro hero to continue undeterred. Tough crowd. Anyway, I'm here to present the guidelines of your practical exam. Are you ready? As President Mike explained the exercise, defeating robotic villains of varying point values within an urban training ground, Izuku quickly analyzed the implications. This would be a test of combat effectiveness, yes, but also strategic thinking and quirk application in a complex environment. When students were assigned to different battle centers, Izuku found himself separated from Katsuki. Probably deliberate, Katsuki muttered. They don't want friends coordinating. Makes sense, Izuku agreed. Well, see you on the other side, Kaken. Yeah. Don't embarrass me by scoring too low. Izuku. With that characteristic parting shot, Katsuki headed toward his assigned area, leaving Izuku to make his way to Battle Center B. The training ground was impressive. A sprawling artificial cityscape designed to simulate urban combat conditions. As Izuku joined the other examinees at the entrance, he took the opportunity to observe his competition. Some appeared nervous, others overconfident. A few were performing last-minute quirk warm-ups or stretches. One girl in particular caught his attention, a brunette with a focused expression who was performing what appeared to be centering exercises. Something about her demeanor suggested someone who took the responsibility of heroism seriously. Before Izuku could consider introducing himself, President Mick's voice blared from speakers overhead. Right, let's start. Get moving. There are no countdowns in real battles. The sudden announcement caught many examinees off guard, but Izuku reacted instantly. Flames erupted from his hands and feet, propelling him into the air as the gates opened. His quirk had become so intuitive that activation required barely a thought, the fire responding to his will as naturally as breathing. From his elevated position, Izuku quickly surveyed the battlefield. Robot villains were already emerging from buildings and side streets, their mechanical bodies gleaming in the sunlight. One-pointers seemed to be the most numerous but least armored, he observed. Three-pointers are larger, better protected, but slower. Strategic thinking clicked into place as he assessed his options. Efficiency would be key, maximizing points while conserving energy for the full duration of the test. Diving toward a cluster of one-point robots, Izuku encased his fists in concentrated flame. Fire Fist, he called, striking the first robot with a precise blow that melted through its central processing unit. Without pausing, he spun into a flame-enhanced kick that decapitated a second robot. The third attempted to counterattack, its mechanical arm swinging toward him. Izuku ducked under the strike, then unleashed a focused fire stream that cut through the robot's midsection like a welding torch. 3 points already, he noted, immediately scanning for his next targets. Spotting a two-pointer rounding a corner, Izuku launched himself toward it with flame propulsion. The robot detected his approach and fired a net designed to entangle examinees. With a mid-air twist, Izuku altered his trajectory, simultaneously creating a thin fire whip that wrapped around a nearby lamppost. Using the leverage, he swung around behind the robot and delivered a nova burst to its vulnerable rear armor. The explosion was precisely controlled, powerful enough to disable the robot but contained to prevent collateral damage to the surroundings. This level of restraint and precision had taken years to master, but now came naturally to Izuku in combat situations. As the test progressed, Izuku established a rhythm: aerial reconnaissance to identify target clusters, controlled descent for engagement, precision strikes to disable with minimal energy expenditure, then back to the air for the next assessment. His point total climbed steadily: 28, 35, 43, each victory reinforcing his confidence without breeding complacency. Throughout the battle, he remained aware of his surroundings, noting not just robot positions but the movements and quirks of other examinees. The brunette girl he'd noticed earlier was using some form of gravity manipulation, touching robots to make them float before releasing them to crash into the ground. A boy with engines in his legs moved with impressive speed through the battlefield. Others displayed quirks ranging from hardening to tape emission to creation of various objects. So many amazing abilities, Izuku thought admiringly as he disabled a three-pointer with a concentrated flame drill. This is what UA attracts, the best of the best. Approximately 6 minutes into the exam, with his point total at 58, Izuku paused on a rooftop to catch his breath and reassess. His stamina had improved dramatically over years of training, but maintaining aerial mobility while executing precision attacks still required careful energy management. That's when the ground began to shake. Buildings trembled as something massive emerged from beneath the city streets. A towering robot that dwarfed all previous opponents. This had to be the zero-pointer President Mike had mentioned, an obstacle to be avoided rather than defeated. Most examinees immediately reversed direction, fleeing from the mechanical behemoth as it began rolling forward, crushing everything in its path. Izuku was about to follow suit when a cry of pain caught his attention. Below, partially trapped beneath fallen debris, was the brunette girl. The zero-pointer was advancing directly toward her position, and from his vantage point, Izuku could see she was struggling unsuccessfully to free herself. No points for defeating the zero-pointer, he reminded himself. Engaging it would waste time. I could use collecting more points, but even as these practical considerations crossed his mind, his body was already moving. Without conscious decision, Izuku launched himself from the rooftop, flames propelling him toward the trapped girl. "Hold on," he called as he landed beside her. "I'll get you out." The debris pinning her leg was too heavy to move quickly by hand. With seconds before the zero-pointer reached them, Izuku made a split-second decision. Creating a carefully controlled flame around his hands, he melted through the metal beam that trapped her, being meticulously careful to keep the heat away from her skin. "Can you move?" he asked urgently as the last section gave way. "I think so, but my ankle," she began, attempting to stand before wincing in pain. The zero-pointer loomed directly above them now, its massive tread just seconds from their position. There was no time for a careful extraction. "Sorry about this?" Izuku apologized quickly before scooping her into his arms. Flames erupted from his back and feet, catapulting them away from danger just as the robot's tread crushed the spot where they'd been. But they weren't clear yet. The zero-pointer's sensors detected their movement and one of its massive arms swung toward the midair. Izuku twisted his body, adjusting his flame output to change their trajectory, but realized they wouldn't clear the strike zone in time. In that critical moment, instinct and training converged. "Nova burst," he shouted, transferring the girl to a one-armed hold while extending his free hand toward the approaching mechanical arm. The compressed fire sphere shot from his palm, detonating against the robot's limb with precisely calculated force. The explosion didn't destroy the arm entirely. That would have required more power than Izuku wanted to release with a civilian present, but it disrupted its movement enough for them to slip past. With the immediate danger avoided, Izuku landed on a rooftop several buildings away, gently setting the girl down. "Are you all right?" he asked, kneeling to examine her injured ankle. "Yes, thanks to you," she replied, her brown eyes wide with gratitude. "That was amazing. Your quirk is so versatile." Izuku smiled modestly. "It's all about application and control. Your ankle looks sprained, not broken. Can you put any weight on it?" She attempted to stand, using his shoulder for support. "A little. I can manage. You should get back to collecting points. There's not much time left." He glanced at the battlefield, where other examinees were still engaged with the remaining robots. Are you sure? I don't want to leave you if you need help. I'm sure, she insisted. You just sacrificed valuable time to save me. I don't want to cost you your chance at admission. With a nod of understanding, Izuku prepared to return to the battle. Take care of that ankle, he advised before reigniting his flame propulsion. As he soared back into the fray, Izuku spotted several unclaimed robots and quickly engaged, but his thoughts kept returning to the rescue. Despite potentially sacrificing points, he felt absolutely certain he'd made the right choice. No aspiring hero could ignore someone in danger regardless of the circumstances. In the remaining minute of the exam, Izuku managed to defeat 4 more robots, bringing his final point total to 66, a respectable score that he hoped would be sufficient for admission. As Present Mix's voice announced the conclusion of the test, Izuku landed near the exit gate, extinguishing his flames. His body ached from the exertion, but satisfaction outweighed the fatigue. He had performed to the best of his abilities, adapting to the challenges presented and staying true to his heroic principles. The brunette girl was there, being treated by a small elderly woman Izuku recognized as Recovery Girl, UA's legendary healing hero. When she spotted him, the girl waved enthusiastically. Hey, fire guy, thank you again for saving me back there. Izuku approached with a friendly smile. It was nothing, really. I'm glad you're okay. I'm Izuku Midoriya. By the way, Achiko Uraraka, she replied brightly. And it wasn't nothing. That zero-pointer was terrifying, but you didn't hesitate at all. She leaned closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Do you think maybe there were secret points for rescue actions? It seems weird that they'd include civilians in danger if saving them wasn't part of the evaluation. The question gave Izuku pause. He hadn't considered that possibility, having acted purely on instinct and moral conviction. Maybe, he acknowledged. But honestly, even if there weren't, I'd still have done the same thing. Being a hero isn't just about fighting villains. It's about saving people, whatever the situation. Uraraka's expression softened. That's exactly right. I hope we both make it in, Midoriya. UA needs heroes with that kind of attitude. As examinees began filing out of the battle center, Izuku spotted the blue-haired boy with engine legs approaching. His formal demeanor and precise movements suggested someone with a structured, possibly traditional background. Excuse me, the boy addressed Izuku directly. I observed your actions during the exam. Your quirk control is exemplary, but what truly impressed me was your immediate response to assist your fellow examinee at personal cost. Such selflessness embodies the true spirit of heroism. Before Izuku could respond, the boy extended his hand with mechanical precision. Tenya Ida, I look forward to potentially studying alongside you at UA. Izuku Midoriya, he replied, shaking Ida's hand. Thank you for the kind words. Your speed was incredible out there. As the three continued conversing on their way out, Izuku felt a strange sense of rightness, as if these connections, formed in the crucible of the entrance exam, might be the beginning of something important. Regardless of the exam results, today had reaffirmed his conviction the path to becoming a true hero wasn't measured solely in victories or points, but in the choices made when lives hung in the balance. The week following the entrance exam stretched interminably for Izuku. Despite his confidence in his performance, doubt inevitably crept in during quiet moments. Had his rescue of Uraraka cost him too many potential points? Was his quirk control truly at the level UA expected? Should he have approached the entire exam differently? He channeled this nervous energy into training, maintaining his regular regimen at Dagoba Beach, now completely clean thanks to his efforts. The once trash-strewn shoreline had become a popular spot for local families, though few knew the transformation was largely the work of a single dedicated teenager. Your mind is elsewhere today, Tashinori observed during one of their sessions. The gaunt man sat on a bench, watching as Izuku practiced flame precision exercises. Izuku extinguished the intricate fire pattern he'd been maintaining and sighed, just anxious about the results. They should come any day now. Tashinori's thin lips curved into a knowing smile. Anxiety is natural, but don't let it overshadow what you've accomplished. Regardless of the outcome, the work you've put in has transformed you into someone capable of true heroism. I know, Izuku agreed, sitting beside his mentor, and I don't regret any of it. Even if I don't get into UA, I'll find another path to becoming a hero. That's the spirit, Tashinori nodded approvingly. Though between us, I don't think you need to worry about alternative paths just yet. Before Izuku could question this cryptic statement, Tashinori changed the subject. Have you continued developing that temperature gradation technique we discussed? The one for rescue operations in extreme environments. Their conversation shifted to technical quirk applications, but Tashinori's confident assertion lingered in Izuku's mind, offering unexpected reassurance. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Izuku was alone when he discovered the envelope bearing Yue's distinctive seal in the mailbox, his mother having gone grocery shopping. With trembling hands, he carried it to his room, taking a moment to compose himself before carefully opening the envelope. Inside was a small circular device that, when placed on his desk, projected a holographic image of All Might himself, the symbol of peace and, apparently, a UA faculty member. "I am here as a projection," the hero's booming voice announced. Izuku gasped, leaning forward intently. Meeting All Might had been a childhood dream, and while this was just a recording, hearing the legendary hero address him directly was surreal. "Young Midoriya, I'm pleased to inform you that you've been accepted to UA High School's Hero course. Your performance in the entrance exam was exemplary." All Might's perpetual smile seemed particularly genuine as he continued. 66 villain points places you among our top scorers. But that's not all. You see, the entrance exam wasn't just about combat prowess. The projection shifted to show footage of Izuku rescuing Uraraka from the zero-pointer. A hero course that only focused on defeating enemies would be missing the point, which is why we also award rescue points, evaluated by a panel of judges. And you, young Midoriya, earned 70 rescue points for your selfless actions. Izuku's eyes widened. 70 rescue points? That meant your total of 136 points places you first among all examinees. Congratulations, young man. This is your Hero Academia. The hologram concluded with additional information about orientation and the start of classes, but Izuku barely registered these details, stunned by the revelation of his ranking. First place? Among all examinees? When the projection ended, he sat in silence for several minutes, processing everything. Then, unable to contain his emotions any longer, he activated his quirk in celebration, tiny flames dancing around his fingertips like fireflies as tears of joy streamed down his face. By the time Inko returned home, Izuku had composed himself enough to share the news calmly, at least until his mother's emotional reaction triggered his own again, resulting in both Midoriya's weeping happily in the kitchen. After calling his father to share the news, Izuku's next message was to Katsuki. "I got in." "You?" The response came almost immediately. "Of course I got in, idiot. Second place overall. Which means someone beat me, and it better have been you." Izuku smiled at his friend's characteristic response. "First place. 136 total points." There was a brief pause before Katsuki replied, "Damn. Guess I'll have to kick your ass at UA instead." "Congrats, Izuku." Coming from Katsuki, this was practically effusive praise. Their rivalry remained strong, but it had evolved into something that pushed them both to improve rather than creating resentment. Later that evening, Izuku received another message, this one from an unknown number. "Hi Midoriya, it's Uraraka, the girl you saved in the exam. I got your number from the examinee contact list. I just wanted to say thank you again, and guess what? I got into UA too. See you at orientation." The message brought a smile to Izuku's face. Somehow, knowing that Uraraka had also been accepted made his own achievement feel even more significant. It felt right that they would continue on this journey together. The first day at UA arrived with clear skies and perfect spring weather, as if nature itself approved of this new beginning. Izuku, dressed in the school's distinctive gray uniform, took a moment to appreciate the impressive main building before entering. Finding Class 1A took some navigation through UA's extensive hallways, but Izuku eventually located the oversized door that marked his destination. Inside, he found several students already present, including some familiar faces. "Midoriya," Uraraka called cheerfully, waving from her seat. "Over here." Nearby, Ida was engaged in what appeared to be a somewhat one-sided conversation with a student whose half-red, half-white hair and heterochromatic eyes gave him a distinctly memorable appearance. As Izuku approached Uraraka, the classroom door slid open again, revealing Katsuki. Their eyes met, and Katsuki gave a small nod of acknowledgement before claiming a seat near the front of the classroom. "Is that your friend?" Uraraka asked curiously. "He seems intense." Izuku chuckled. That's Katsuki Bakugo. We've known each other since we were kids. He's actually the one who helped me develop my combat techniques during training. Oh, Uraraka's eyes widened. So you two trained together? That's so cool. Maybe we could all practice together sometime. Before Izuku could respond, Ida approached with his characteristic formal stride. Midoriya, excellent to see you again. I trust you're prepared for the academic rigor UA is known for. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a disheveled-looking man in a sleeping bag, who introduced himself as Shota Aizawa, their homeroom teacher. His blunt demeanor and immediate announcement of a Quirk apprehension test set the tone for UA's demanding approach to hero education. As the class filed out to the training grounds, Izuku found himself walking alongside the red and white-haired boy Ida had been talking to earlier. You're Midoriya, right? The boy asked in a measured tone. I heard you placed first in the entrance exam. Yes, Izuku confirmed, somewhat surprised by the direct approach. And you are Shoto Todoroki. The name was offered without elaboration, though something in his expression suggested he was evaluating Izuku with unusual interest. Before their exchange could continue, they reached the training ground where Aizawa waited impatiently. Today you'll be performing standard physical fitness tests, but with permission to use your quirks, the teacher explained, his tone making it clear this was not merely an assessment but a challenge. Bakugo, you scored highest in the practical entrance exam among those without rescue points. Step up and show us your pitch for the softball throw. Katsuki moved forward confidently, taking the ball from Aizawa. He wound up dramatically, explosions crackling from his palm as he launched the ball with a shout of, "Die!" The resulting blast propelled the ball far beyond normal human capabilities. 705.2 meters, Aizawa announced, showing the class his measuring device. This is the reality of hero training, understanding how to maximize your quirk's effectiveness in every situation. He then dropped a bombshell. The student who scores lowest across all events will be judged as having no potential and expelled immediately. A nervous murmur spread through the class, but Izuku remained calm. Years of dedicated training had prepared him for physical challenges, and his quirk offered versatile applications for each test. The first event was the 50-meter dash. When his turn came, Izuku took a sprinter's stance, then activated his quirk at precisely calculated output. Flames erupted from his calves and lower back, propelling him forward in a controlled burst that carried him across the finish line in 3.89 seconds. Not the fastest time, Ida had managed 3.04 with his engine quirk, but respectable. For the grip strength test, Izuku channeled heat into his muscles, using a technique he developed that temporarily enhanced his physical capabilities by increasing blood flow and neural responses. The result was 76 kilograms, again not the highest score but solid. The standing long jump proved more suitable for his abilities. Using flame propulsion from his feet at the moment of jumping, Izuku cleared the sandbox entirely, landing smoothly beyond its boundaries. By the time they reached the softball throw, Izuku had maintained consistent performance across all events. For this test, he decided to demonstrate more of his quirk's capabilities. Taking the ball, he created a swirling flame vortex around his throwing arm, building rotational momentum before releasing both the ball and a precisely timed flame burst from his palm. The combination of physical throw, rotational force, and flame propulsion sent the ball soaring. 829.5 meters, Aizawa announced, a flicker of interest briefly animating his otherwise impassive expression. The remaining tests, sit-ups, seated toe touch, repeated sidesteps, and long-distance running, similarly allowed Izuku to showcase his quirk's adaptability and his physical conditioning. Throughout, he maintained careful energy management, never overexerting himself for a single event at the expense of overall performance. When all tests were complete, Aizawa displayed the final rankings. Izuku had placed 4th overall, behind Yaoyorozu, whose creation quirk proved incredibly versatile, Todoroki, whose ice abilities excelled in several events, and Katsuki, whose explosive power translated well to most physical challenges. Oh, and about the expulsion threat, Aizawa added casually, that was a logical ruse to draw out your best performances. Relief spread through the class, though Izuku suspected their teacher had been entirely serious until seeing their capabilities in action. As they headed back to change before their next class, Todoroki fell into step beside Izuku again. Your quirk control is impressive, he stated without preamble. The way you modulate flame output for different applications shows years of dedicated training. Thank you, Izuku replied, surprised by the compliment. Your ice powers are amazing too. The precision you demonstrated during the sidesteps was remarkable. Todoroki seemed about to say something else when Katsuki interrupted, slapping Izuku on the back with just enough force to be felt. Fourth place. Izuku? Slacking already? Despite his words, there was no real criticism in Katsuki's tone, just their usual competitive banter. Says the guy who came in third, Izuku retorted good-naturedly. Yaoyorozu's quirk is incredibly versatile for these kinds of tests. As Todoroki silently moved ahead, Katsuki lowered his voice. That half-and-half guy was watching you specifically during the tests, like he was sizing you up. I noticed, Izuku confirmed. Something about him seems, I don't know, intense in a different way than most of our classmates. Katsuki shrugged. Well, we're at UA now. Everyone here is serious about becoming a hero. As they reached the locker rooms, Izuku found himself reflecting on this new chapter in his journey. UA would clearly push him beyond his current limits, surrounding him with peers whose abilities and determination matched or exceeded his own. This is exactly what I've been working toward, he thought with growing excitement. The real challenge begins now. The afternoon of their first day brought another surprise. Basic hero training with All Might himself. The class erupted in excitement as the legendary hero burst through the door with his trademark enthusiasm. I am here. Coming through the door like a normal person, there was nothing normal about All Might's entrance, but his larger-than-life presence immediately electrified the atmosphere. Dressed in his Silver Age costume, the symbol of peace cut an inspiring figure as he explained their first practical exercise. Today's training will pull no punches. You'll be split into hero and villain teams for indoor battle trials. The scenario was straightforward. A villain team would guard a nuclear weapon, a papier-mâché prop, inside a building, while a hero team would attempt to either capture the villains using special tape or touch the weapon to secure it. Each match would last 15 minutes, with teams determined by lottery. When the drawing concluded, Izuku found himself paired with Uraraka as the hero team, facing Katsuki and Ida as the villains. The matchup immediately sent a ripple of anticipation through him. Facing Katsuki in their first official UA combat exercise felt somehow appropriate, like a culmination of their years training together. Looks like we're partners, Midoriya, Uraraka said cheerfully as they prepared in the monitoring room while the villain team set up. Any strategies against Bakugo and Ida? Izuku nodded, already analyzing the matchup. Bakugo's explosions are powerful and versatile, but they work best at close to medium range. Ida's speed makes him perfect for intercepting intruders or quickly repositioning to guard the weapon. He pulled out a small notebook, quickly sketching the building layout they'd been shown. Our best approach is probably to separate them. Based on their personalities, I'm guessing Bakugo will want to confront us directly while Ida stays with the weapon. So we need to get past Bakugo somehow, Uraraka mused. My zero gravity could help with mobility, but it has a weight limit and time restriction. Your quirk might be perfect for the weapon itself, Izuku suggested. If you can touch it, you could make it float and easily secure it before Ida can stop you. They continued refining their strategy until All Might called them forward. As they prepared to enter the building, Izuku caught Katsuki's eye through the surveillance feed. The challenging smirk on his friend's face was all too familiar. This would be a serious fight. Ready? Izuku asked Uraraka as they positioned themselves at the building entrance. She nodded, her expression shifting from friendly to focused. Let's show them what we can do. All Might's voice boomed through their earpieces. Hero team, villain team, battle trial, begin. They entered cautiously, Izuku taking point with Uraraka close behind. The building's interior was a maze of corridors and rooms, providing numerous ambush opportunities. Stay alert, Izuku whispered. Bakugo knows my fighting style, but he's also predictable in certain ways. He'll want to prove himself with a direct confrontation. As if summoned by these words, an explosion erupted from a side corridor, and Katsuki burst through the smoke, palms crackling with energy. Izuku, he shouted, a feral grin on his face. Don't think I'll go easy on you just because we're friends. Izuku pushed Uraraka back protectively. Go find the weapon, he urged. I'll handle Kaken. As Uraraka darted away down another corridor, Izuku faced his childhood friend and rival. Despite the exercise's pretense of heroes and villains, There was nothing artificial about the competitive fire burning between them. "Been waiting for this," Katsuki said, his tone serious despite his grin. "A real fight with witnesses. Time to see which of us is really stronger." "This isn't about strength alone," Izuku replied, flames beginning to dance along his arms. "It's about strategy and teamwork." Katsuki scoffed. "Save the lecture. Show me what you've got." He launched forward with an explosion-boosted lunge, right hand cocked back for his signature opening move. Izuku recognized it instantly. They'd sparred hundreds of times, and Katsuki's initial attack was always the same. A powerful right swing designed to test defenses. Instead of dodging as expected, Izuku stepped into the attack, flames erupting around his body in a controlled burst that momentarily disrupted Katsuki's vision. In that split second of distraction, Izuku ducked under the swing and delivered a flame-enhanced palm strike to Katsuki's solar plexus. The impact sent Katsuki skidding backward, though he maintained his footing. "Not bad," he acknowledged, eyes narrowing. "But predictable." The next exchange was a blur of explosions and flames, as both combatants drew on years of training and intimate knowledge of each other's techniques. Katsuki's raw power and aggression met Izuku's precision and tactical thinking in a spectacular display that had their classmates watching the monitors in awe. "Amazing," Kirishima commented in the observation room. "Those two move like they've been fighting together for years." "They have," Todoroki noted quietly. "Their quirks complement and counter each other perfectly. Fire versus explosions, similar yet fundamentally different." Back in the building, the battle intensified. Katsuki unleashed a series of explosions that forced Izuku into defensive maneuvers, creating distance between them that Katsuki quickly closed with explosion-propelled movement. "You're still too cautious, Izuku," Katsuki taunted as they exchanged blows. "Always holding back, always worrying about control." Izuku deflected another explosion with a fire shield. "And you're still too focused on overwhelming force, Kaken. There's more to victory than raw power." Meanwhile, Uraraka had located the weapon room, where Ida was guarding the nuclear prop with exaggerated villainous posturing. "Aha! The hero arrives," Ida declared in an over-the-top evil voice. "But you're too late. This weapon of mass destruction shall remain in villain hands." Despite his theatrical performance, Ida's vigilance was genuine. His engine quirk allowed him to intercept Uraraka's every approach, matching her increased mobility from her zero-gravity self-application. "Midoriya," she whispered into her communicator during a brief respite behind cover. "I found the weapon, but Ida's too fast. I can't get close enough to touch it." Izuku, still engaged with Katsuki, processed this information while dodging another explosion. "Can you create a distraction? Something unexpected that might pull his attention just long enough?" "Maybe," Uraraka replied uncertainly. "But I'll need perfect timing." The communication was interrupted as Katsuki launched his most powerful attack yet. A concentrated explosion directed through a specialized grenade-shaped gauntlet. "AP shot!" he shouted, releasing a focused blast that tore through the corridor. Izuku had milliseconds to react. Drawing on his deepest reserves, he countered with a technique he'd been developing but had never used at full power. Nova Shield. A dense, compressed wall of flame materialized before him, absorbing the explosive force in a spectacular collision of quirks that shook the entire building. The resulting shockwave cracked walls and shattered windows throughout the structure. In the observation room, All Might leaned forward with concern. "Young Bakugo, young Midoriya, remember this is training. Control your output." Despite the warning, neither combatant was willing to yield. Their rivalry had escalated beyond the exercise parameters into a genuine test of everything they'd worked toward. Katsuki pressed his advantage, closing distance for close-quarters combat where Izuku's fire manipulation had less time to deploy. They exchanged blows with practiced precision, a testament to countless sparring sessions that had honed their fighting styles against each other. "You've improved," Katsuki acknowledged after a particularly effective counter from Izuku. "But so have I." He feinted left before executing a spinning explosion-enhanced kick that caught Izuku's guard at an awkward angle, breaking his stance and sending him tumbling backward into a wall. The impact momentarily stunned Izuku, giving Katsuki an opening to close in for the capture tape. But years of training hadn't been for nothing. Even dazed, Izuku's instincts kicked in. As Katsuki lunged forward, Izuku activated his flame propulsion from both feet, launching himself upward and over his opponent in a maneuver that utilized the ceiling as a springboard. Landing behind Katsuki, Izuku immediately counterattacked with a fire fist combo, a series of flame-enhanced strikes aimed at overwhelming Katsuki's guard. The exchange pushed both young heroes to their limits, each anticipating and countering the other's moves in what resembled an elaborately choreographed dance more than a battle. Meanwhile, Uraraka had formulated her plan. Using debris from the earlier shockwave, she created floating projectiles that orbited around her like satellites. When Ida charged to intercept her latest approach, she released them all at once from different angles, creating a momentary distraction. A clever ruse, Ida declared, dodging the projectiles with his superior speed. But futile against my villainous vigilance. What he didn't notice was that Uraraka had removed her boots during the distraction. With them floating nearby as decoys, she used her quirk on herself and silently floated toward the ceiling, approaching the weapon from above, while Ida's attention remained on ground level. Back in the corridor, Izuku and Katsuki had reached a stalemate. Both were breathing heavily, their uniforms showing signs of their intense exchange, burn marks and tears that testified to the seriousness of their contest. Time's running out, Izuku noted between breaths. Looks like this might end with the weapon objective rather than captures. Katsuki's grin turned predatory. Not a chance. 4 eyes won't let your partner anywhere near that weapon. At that moment, Izuku's communicator crackled with Uraraka's excited voice. Midoriya, I've secured the weapon. We win. Surprise flashed across Katsuki's face, quickly replaced by frustration. Damn it! All Might's voice boomed through the building. The hero team wins. As they gathered in the monitoring room for post-exercise evaluation, All Might offered his assessment. An impressive display from all participants. Young Ida showed excellent dedication to his role, while young Uraraka demonstrated creative problem-solving. Young Bakugo's combat prowess was outstanding, though perhaps too focused on a single opponent. He turned to Izuku. Young Midoriya balanced defense and team coordination effectively, recognizing that victory could be achieved through multiple paths. The remaining battles proceeded with varying strategies and outcomes, each team bringing unique quirk combinations to the exercise. Throughout the observations, Izuku found himself particularly drawn to Todoroki's performance. The dual quirk user completely immobilized his opponents with overwhelming ice powers without ever utilizing the fire side that Izuku had noticed during their brief interactions. He's only using half his abilities, Izuku realized. Yet he's still one of the strongest in our class. Why hold back such a potentially powerful aspect of his quirk? After classes concluded, Izuku found Katsuki waiting by the school gates, his expression thoughtful rather than angry despite their earlier confrontation. Good match, Katsuki said simply. Your fire shield technique has improved. Coming from Katsuki, this was high praise. Thanks. Your AP shot is getting more focused too. The directional control was impressive. They fell into step together, their conversation shifting to technical analysis of the day's exercises and observations about their classmates' abilities. That half-and-half bastard is hiding something, Katsuki noted, echoing Izuku's earlier thoughts. He's got fire powers too, but he didn't use them once. You noticed that too? Izuku was surprised by Katsuki's perception. I wondered if there was a strategic reason, but it seemed more personal somehow. Katsuki shrugged. Whatever. He'll have to go all out eventually if he wants to compete with us. As they approached the station where their paths would diverge, Katsuki paused. Next time we fight, I won't lose. Today was just reconnaissance. Izuku smiled at the familiar competitive declaration. I'll be ready. Their fist bump, explosion meeting flame, sealed the promise of future challenges that would push them both to grow stronger. On the train ride home, Izuku reflected on his first day at UA. The caliber of his classmates, the practical nature of the training, and the presence of professional heroes as instructors. Everything confirmed that this was exactly where he needed to be to pursue his dream. This is just the beginning, he thought, watching the city blur past the windows. The real journey to becoming a hero starts now. The following days established a rhythm to UA life that was both exhilarating and exhausting. Each class presented unique challenges, from Midnight's modern hero art history to Ectoplasm's mathematics for heroes. But the most demanding sessions were undoubtedly those taught by Aizawa and All Might, where theory met practice in often grueling exercises designed to push students beyond their perceived limits. Throughout it all, Izuku absorbed everything with characteristic dedication. His hero analysis notebooks filled with observations about his classmates' quirks and techniques, potential applications he hadn't considered for his own abilities, and insights gleaned from professional heroes. One morning, approximately 2 weeks into the semester, Izawa made an announcement that sent ripples of excitement through Class 1A. Today, you'll be participating in rescue training at an off-campus facility. This exercise will test your quirk applications in disaster scenarios rather than combat situations. As the class prepared to board the bus, Izuku found himself in conversation with Tsuyu Azui, a frog quirk user whose straightforward nature he found refreshing. "Midoriya," she said, head tilted curiously. "Your fire quirk seems perfect for combat, Karo. But how do you adapt it for rescue operations?" The question was perceptive and gave Izuku an opportunity to share techniques he'd specifically developed for non-combat heroism. "Temperature control is essential," he explained enthusiastically. "I can modulate my flames to provide warmth without burning, useful for hypothermia victims or creating safe zones in cold environments. For structural collapses, I can use precision cutting to create extraction paths without causing further damage." He demonstrated by creating a small, intensely focused flame on his fingertip. "This can cut through most building materials with minimal collateral effects." "That's impressive versatility, Karo," Tsuyu nodded appreciatively. "Most elemental quirks tend to be primarily destructive. I've worked hard to develop rescue applications," Izuku acknowledged. "A hero should be prepared to save lives in any situation, not just fight villains." Their conversation continued on the bus, expanding to include other classmates discussing their quirk's rescue applications. Uraraka explained how her zero-gravity could lift debris, while Kirishima noted his hardening provided both protection for civilians and structural reinforcement capabilities. When they arrived at the unforeseen simulation joint, USJ, a massive dome-like facility, they were greeted by the Space Hero 13, whose specialized rescue expertise had saved countless lives. "Welcome to USJ," the astronaut-suited hero announced. "This facility contains simulation zones for every disaster scenario imaginable. Floods, fires, landslides, urban collapse, and more. Today, you'll learn that quirks meant for combat can also save lives when applied correctly." 13's philosophical perspective on quirk usage resonated deeply with Izuku, who had always approached his abilities from multiple angles rather than focusing solely on combat applications. However, before the training could begin, an ominous distortion appeared in the central plaza. The black mist expanded into a swirling vortex from which emerged dozens of sinister figures, clearly not part of the planned exercise. "Gather together and don't move," Izawa commanded, his usually apathetic demeanor replaced by urgent authority. 13. Protect the students. Those are villains. The atmosphere transformed instantly from excited anticipation to tense fear as the students processed what was happening. A real villain attack at UA of all places? From the vortex stepped a thin figure with unsettling hands attached to his body and face. Even from a distance, his menacing presence sent chills through the watching students. Eraserhead and 13. The hand-covered villain spoke with disturbing casualness. "According to the schedule, All Might should be here as well. Where is he?" Izuku's analytical mind raced to understand the situation. "They're here specifically for All Might," he whispered to the classmates clustered around him. "This was planned, coordinated. But how did they get past UA's security?" Yaoyorozu questioned, her expression grave. The mist villain expanded again, addressing them directly. "Greetings, UA students. We are the League of Villains. Forgive our audacity, but today we've come to end the symbol of peace, All Might." Before anyone could react, Izawa pulled his distinctive capture scarf and goggles into place. 13. Begin evacuation. Kaminari, try contacting the school with your quirk. I'll handle them until reinforcements arrive. "Wait, Sensei," Midoriya called, alarmed by the overwhelming numbers below. "You can't fight them all yourself. Your fighting style is best for small groups or one-on-one scenarios. No good hero has only one trick," Izawa replied curtly before leaping into action. What followed was a masterclass in pro-hero combat. Despite the disadvantageous conditions, Eraserhead moved with practiced efficiency, erasing quirks and neutralizing multiple opponents with his capture weapon and martial arts expertise. While 13 attempted to lead the students toward the exit, the mist villain intercepted them. "I cannot allow you to leave," he stated, his gaseous body expanding to block their path. Bakugo and Kirishima, reacting instinctively, launched a combined attack against the mist, but their efforts passed through him ineffectively. In the confusion that followed, the villain's quirk activated, creating multiple warp gates that scattered the students throughout the facility. Izuku found himself falling through darkness before splashing into water, the flood zone. As he surfaced, he spotted Tsuyu nearby, already perfectly adapted to the aquatic environment thanks to her frog quirk. In the water with them was Mineta, whose pop-off quirk seemed less immediately useful in their current situation. "We need to regroup with the others," Izuku said, treading water as he assessed their surroundings. Villains were already converging on their position, quirks activated for underwater combat. "First, we need to get out of the water, Karo," Tsuyu replied practically. These villains were chosen specifically for this zone. Using her extendable tongue, she grabbed both Izuku and Mineta, pulling them toward a nearby yacht. Once safely aboard, they crouched low to avoid detection while planning their next move. The villains came for All Might specifically, Izuku reasoned, his analytical mind already mapping the situation. They must have some countermeasure prepared for him, or they wouldn't be so confident. "But All Might is invincible," Mineta protested, shaking with fear. "Nobody can beat the symbol of peace." Izuku shook his head. "No hero is truly invincible. If they've prepared carefully enough, studied his capabilities and limitations. We should focus on our current situation, Karo," Tsuyu interrupted sensibly. "The villains are surrounding the boat. We need a plan to escape and assist our classmates." Izuku nodded, strategy already forming. "Azui, call me Tsu. Tsu, your underwater mobility is our best asset here. Mineta, your sticky balls can immobilize multiple opponents at once. And my fire quirk." He paused, looking at the water surrounding them. Traditional flames would be at a disadvantage in this environment, but he'd trained for situations precisely like this. "I can still use controlled bursts for propulsion, even over water," he continued. "And I've developed techniques for operating in adverse conditions." To demonstrate, he created a condensed flame sphere that burned with such intensity that even water contact wouldn't immediately extinguish it. "Compressed oxygen feeding the combustion," he explained. "It won't last long underwater, but it provides options." They formulated a plan. Mineta would deploy his sticky spheres to immobilize and cluster the aquatic villains, while Izuku created a whirlpool effect using precisely calculated flame bursts. Tsuyu would then extract them during the confusion. When they executed the plan, it worked even better than anticipated. The combination of Mineta's floating adhesive balls and Izuku's strategic flame deployment created a vortex that trapped the villains together in a sticky, struggling mess. "Now!" Izuku signaled as Tsuyu's tongue wrapped around both him and Mineta, launching them toward the central plaza. As they cleared the flood zone, they gained a clear view of the overall situation, and it was dire. Aizawa, despite his impressive initial showing, had been overwhelmed by sheer numbers and a particularly monstrous villain with exposed brain matter and powerful physical abilities. "That's their trump card," Izuku realized aloud. "That creature, it must be bioengineered for combat against pros." They watched in horror as the monster, which the hand-covered villain called Nomu, brutally overpowered Aizawa, breaking his arms and slamming his face into the concrete. "We need to help him," Izuku stated, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. "That's crazy, Karo," Tsuyu objected. "We're still students. That thing defeated a pro hero." "I'm not suggesting we fight it directly," Izuku clarified, "but we can create a distraction to extract Aizawa-sensei. If we leave him there, he'll die." Before his companions could respond, Izuku spotted movement at the entrance. Ida had successfully escaped to summon reinforcements. Relief washed over him, but it was short-lived. They still needed to survive until help arrived. The hand-covered villain had noticed them. "More players entering the game? Nomu, kill the extras." The monstrous Nomu turned its attention toward them, moving with frightening speed despite its bulk. Instinctively, Izuku pushed his companions back and summoned the most powerful flames he could muster. "Nova Burst!" he shouted, unleashing a compressed fireball that struck the creature directly in the chest. The explosion was significant, creating distance between them and the monster while temporarily obscuring its vision. But when the smoke cleared, Izuku's heart sank. The Nomu stood unharmed, its exposed muscles showing no signs of burn damage. "It has shock absorption and regeneration," the hand villain explained with disturbing glee. Your pathetic fire can't hurt it. Izuku processed this information rapidly. If direct damage isn't effective, then indirect tactics might work. Sue, Mineta. When I give the signal, grab Aizawa-sensei and retreat, he instructed quietly. I'll create cover. Before they could object, Izuku launched himself forward using flame propulsion. Not directly at the Nomu, but in an arcing trajectory that positioned him between the villains and his injured teacher. What's this? A wannabe hero making a last stand? The hand villain mocked. Nomu, crush him. As the monster charged, Izuku executed his plan. Instead of attacking the creature directly, he superheated the ground beneath it, instantly turning the concrete into molten slag. Simultaneously, he created a dense wall of flame between himself and the villains, providing visual cover for Tsuyu and Mineta to extract Aizawa. The Nomu's momentum carried it forward into the liquefied ground, temporarily immobilizing its legs despite its tremendous strength. It wouldn't hold for long, but every second counted. Now, Izuku called, maintaining the flame barrier while carefully monitoring his energy reserves. This level of output was sustainable for only a short duration, even with his years of training. Tsuyu's tongue shot out, wrapping around Aizawa's unconscious form and pulling him to safety, while Mineta provided additional cover with a barrage of sticky spheres aimed at the other villains. The hand villain scratched his neck furiously, clearly agitated. You little Nomu, forget the teacher. Kill that fire brat now. The Nomu wrenched itself free from the molten concrete, flesh regenerating even as it burned away. It lunged toward Izuku with terrifying speed, its massive fist cocked back for a killing blow. In that split second, Izuku made a decision. Rather than attempting to dodge, likely futile given the creature's speed, he channeled every ounce of his quirk's power into a desperate countermeasure. Nova Shield, maximum output, he shouted, creating the densest, most concentrated fire barrier he'd ever attempted. The Nomu's fist collided with the shield in a spectacular explosion of force and flame. The impact sent Izuku flying backward, his barrier shattered but having absorbed enough energy to prevent immediate death. He crashed into a wall, pain lancing through his body as several ribs cracked from the impact. Despite the agony, Izuku immediately struggled to his feet, knowing a follow-up attack was imminent. The Nomu was already charging again, seemingly unaffected by their exchange. Can't outfight it, can't outlast it, Izuku thought desperately. Need to outsmart it somehow. Just as the creature was about to reach him, the USJ entrance exploded inward with tremendous force. Have no fear, boomed an immediately recognizable voice. For I am here. All Might had arrived, but not with his usual smile. His expression was one of cold fury as he surveyed the scene. Injured students, his colleague brutally beaten, and villains standing triumphantly in the midst of the destruction. What followed was beyond anything Izuku had witnessed before. All Might moved with such speed that he seemed to teleport, extracting the remaining students from danger zones before confronting the villains directly. Young Midoriya, he said, briefly pausing beside Izuku's injured form. You've done enough. A true hero knows when to stand firm and when to fall back. Despite the pain, Izuku nodded in understanding. The Nomu has shock absorption and regeneration, he warned. Direct attacks aren't effective. All Might's expression remained grim. Thank you for the information. Now please retreat to safety. As Izuku limped toward his classmates, the clash between All Might and the Nomu began. A battle of titans that shook the very foundations of the USJ. The hand villain's triumphant attitude shifted to frustration as All Might systematically overcame the Nomu's defensive abilities through sheer overwhelming force. If he's designed to absorb shock, All Might declared, delivering a barrage of punches faster than the eye could follow, then I'll just have to go beyond the limit of what he can absorb. The final punch sent the Nomu crashing through the USJ dome and into the sky beyond, effectively removing the villain's trump card. With reinforcements arriving from UA main campus, including several pro-heroes, the remaining villains were forced to retreat. The mist villain extracted the hand-covered leader just as 13 and the other teachers converged on the scene. In the aftermath, as medical attention was administered and statements taken, Izuku found himself reflecting on the day's events. Despite his years of training and preparation, the gap between student and professional hero had never been more apparent than during All Might's intervention. Yet there was something else nagging at him, a strange familiarity in All Might's movements and tactical approach, something that reminded him of young Midoriya. Izuku looked up to find Toshinori Yagi standing beside his stretcher, concern evident in his gaunt features. "Mr. Yagi, what are you doing here?" "I work at UA now," Toshinori explained hesitantly, "as All Might's personal assistant. When I heard about the attack, I came immediately." Izuku frowned slightly. Something about this explanation didn't quite align with his observations. But before he could pursue the thought, Recovery Girl arrived to treat his injuries. "We'll speak later," Toshinori promised, stepping away as the healing hero began her work. As Recovery Girl's quirk accelerated his body's natural healing processes, Izuku found himself exhausted but contemplative. The USJ incident had provided a harsh but valuable lesson in the realities of heroism, the genuine dangers, the split-second decisions, and the sometimes brutal consequences. This is what it means to be a hero, he thought as fatigue overtook him. Not just glory and victories, but pain and sacrifice when necessary. And I'm ready for all of it. With that resolution firmly in mind, he drifted into healing sleep, his dreams filled with flames that protected rather than destroyed, and a future where he stood among those who defended society from the darkness that had so briefly touched their lives today. The screen dims, smoke curling upward as ember particles drift past. And that, my ChronoCrew Legends, was only the beginning. We've just stepped into a timeline where Deku's fire burns with purpose. But this is just the first spark. The real inferno, yet to come. If you felt that heat, drop a comment, drop a like, and keep the timeline alive. 100 likes, and we keep the fire rolling into part 2. Subscribe, share it with a fellow anime addict, and remember, power means nothing without heart. Catch you in the next episode. And never forget, we don't just rewrite stories, we bend timelines. Peace out, legends.